or good morning for those of us on West Coast. We're just going to give everyone a couple minutes to stream in here before we get started, but we'll be getting started in the next couple minutes. I know it's hard to believe that the holidays are already around the corner. I was in Costco last week and could get all my Christmas lights if I needed to. So.
Scary.
I know. And just shop for all of the holidays at the same time. Great. Yeah. And as people stream in, just a note, and Ashley just put a comment in the chat. If you haven't joined one of our webinars before, we do have Q&A. So while we can't see all of your beautiful faces, we can interact with you via the chat. So if you have questions, and I'll pause for questions as we go, please drop them in the chat. We'll pause, we'll answer them. We'll also have dedicated time at the end, but we do like to make this more of an interactive session. So please do feel free to drop any questions as we go. We'll get started here in just a minute. Actually, as we get started, I think we can go ahead and kick off with some intros just while we're waiting for the rest of the group to join. So today we're going to be talking about all things Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and we have an awesome group of panelists to help us out in this conversation. So most of you know me, but I'm Kelsey, you're our head of customer success. Also recently moved into head of revenue role at Rockerbox. I've worked with many of you personally. And Joe, do you want to kick us off with just a brief intro?
Yeah, sure. Kelsey and I met at a past role. It was really cool to dive into Rockerbox. Nowadays, I'm running Q1 Consultants, which is a boutique digital marketing firm with kind of a hyper focus on paid social. I am also a wine nerd and importer, which is sometimes more fun than the digital marketing side.
Armen?
Hey everyone, I'm Armen Rostamian. I lead the SmartData Analytics company. We're a consultancy that focuses on analytics and AI, particularly in marketing use cases. And so looking forward to sharing some insights on how we measure things.
Great. And Chris?
Hey guys, I'm the founder of Social Hustle. We're one of the child agencies underneath Pixis AI. I spend the majority of my time now helping teams launch TikTok as an incremental and profitable D2C channel, and then a ton of time right now partnering with Rockerbox as we do incrementality testing. So I'll hopefully be able to share some really insightful pieces on influencers, on TikTok, paid social, and then the way that we validate all of that through our partners between Rockerbox and House.
Great. And last but not least, Will.
Hi, I head of professional services for Rockerbox, which is all of the consulting and strategic advisory that goes along with our measurement solutions.
Great. Well, without further ado, and for those of you that just joined, we will be taking questions as we go. But the first place we wanted to start, and I think everyone here has a lot to contribute here, is really what should brands be focusing on between now and Black Friday, Cyber Monday? I know we're in crunch time. We have just a little bit over a month out, and a lot of the planning, honestly, is probably already complete, but knowing that there's still further iterations to be made and a lot of things to consider, what's the smartest thing that brands can be thinking about between now and then? And Chris, I don't know if you want to kick us off here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that brands should be focusing on right now is one, validating the content that they're using for both their ad side and their targeting. That's a much longer sentence, but like content is the differentiator. And if you are not testing just a plethora of content right now to understand exactly what's going to hit, you're going to run out of time to do that faster than you can anticipate.
I have one follow-up question there in terms of testing out content. A lot of the brands we work with are looking to validate TikTok more, get into TikTok more. Is there a smart way to test content in TikTok, knowing how frequent like creative refresh rate is needed? Do you have any tips on that?
Yes, I mean, one of the ways that we do that, and one of the reasons we ultimately went with Rockerbox was your guys' ability to marry survey data with attributed data, right? And of any channel, TikTok's usually the hardest to measure. We rely the most on that survey data to really look for that incremental lift. As far as the actual creative testing side of TikTok goes, we are looking for those ROAS mechanics. We're looking for those, real impacts to incrementality. But it's a channel that we spend way more time looking at thumb stop rate. We look at engagement rate. We measure that channel more than any other social channel for the actual engagement of the customer. We're going to try to create content that is entertaining, that is exciting, that is interesting first before it is profitable. And once we have the roadmap for what makes a piece of content or a creator retain users and their interest, then we're going to try to figure out how do we cut and dice this up in a way that we can actually now make it profitable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's super helpful. Joe, I don't know if you have anything to add here, and especially curious on your take here from a meta perspective, given your focus on meta.
Yeah, totally agree with everything that was said. And I think I'll break this into 3 small buckets. So first is just customer flow. I think the best ads find the best people, but if the post-click experience is confusing or broken, you're toast. I think the worst thing is to find that out when it's too late. Second bucket, I would say, is tracking. So when spend is higher, you'll need to kind of optimize more quickly. And I think it's crucial to have high quality data. So making sure that events are being tracked in each platform, and of course, kind of connected to your attribution platform like Rockerbox. And then the last piece, I think, is goals, which I'm sure everyone's sick of talking about KPIs and goals. But the worst thing that could happen is a campaign is wildly successful, but causes havoc for your bottom line. So double, triple checking that the offer you're going live with is profitable and scalable before you press the big green button.
Kelsey, do you mind if I add something on top of that with what Joe said?
Yes.
One of the things that I love that Joe said there is making sure that you not only have the KPIs determined, but you need to make sure that when you hit those, what does that mean for the business? So often I will see customers set these targets, but they don't have the what comes next established, right? If we're hitting a 1 point whatever, does that mean we now allocate additional budget? We now pull from the war chest? What allows you to scale beyond what you've already planned? So many times I've seen that if you can have that established and you have that war chest set aside and you hit those targets, that's how you beat goal. That's how you get ahead. And that's also how you account for any single misstep in the future, is you're constantly pushing beyond whatever that is once you're hitting those targets.
Yeah, and this is one of the areas we're helping brands with on the analytics and AI side, is not just measurement, but prediction. So if you predict how your promo is going to perform, then you basically set up tripwires or thresholds where you're automatically going to go into a planned action. Yep. So, I think the AI prediction models, whether lightweight or more granular, could be really powerful tools for brands to set up now as a precursor to the promo period.
Yeah. Armen, I'd love if you can expand a bit more from your expertise in building out data infrastructure. What are the things that brands should be thinking about between now and Black Friday, Cyber Monday, to kind of this KPI conversation of how do we even track the right KPIs? What data infrastructure do we need? What are lightweight things that brands can start to think about there?
Yeah, and I think every brand is in the midst of an evolution. So typically you're going to start with more generalized prediction and then become more granular from there. So at first it's about, just predicting the total orders, the total revenue, the total margin that you expect, and starting to have reactions to those things if they diverge. So rather than reacting to actuals, you're reacting to variance to a prediction. And so, what is the objective of the promo, whether Black Friday or otherwise? You're hoping to widen your audience, and you're hoping to shorten your time to consideration or move people through the funnel faster. So when you look at the KPIs that are most reflective of that, I think it's where you could start understanding what you need to be measuring more specifically. So I think one very clear example is customer type.
Yeah.
Now, if during a promo period, you get a flood of orders, but they're all orders that are from very recent customers versus new customers versus customers that haven't bought from you for, let's say, 2+ years, those are vastly different outcomes that you need to be set up to understand the day of or the next day, rather than in a period where you can't react as quickly during the promo.
Yeah, that's a great point. Will, do you have anything to add from the Rockerbox lens?
Yeah, of course. I think some of the research that we've done recently looking at last year's BFCM showed that in October, it was not too late to really start building that demand in advance of BFCM. So you can still start kind of filling the funnel, knowing that when the promos come around, when the holiday comes around, you can let those discounts do the hard work. But there is still time to introduce consumers to your brand to make sure that when that critical time period arrives, those people are primed and ready to buy.
I think this conversation tees up our next question really well, in thinking about the hot topic of discounting, bundling. How should brands be thinking about this in the sense of, are they killing their margin, maybe overcomplicating things? I don't know, does anyone have a strong hot take here that you want to share? I'll open up the floor. And I know, Armen, you just shared a little bit, but.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think Black Friday, Cyber Monday is a great time to re-engage with past customers, get your current customers to trade up or bundle things. So there's an inherent opportunity there. And then you look at acquisition and balancing out these two levers. So the discounting should be a lever that expands your audience or shortens the funnel, like I was mentioning. And so, having unique introduction of product to your existing base, which will fund you in going out and finding those new eyeballs in acquisition, I think is the balancing act that could keep your campaign as a whole profitable while maximizing the opportunity of the deepest discounts that you're likely giving at any point in the year, which is typically around Black Friday.
Chris, I'm not sure if you have any perspective to share here when it comes to either influencers or even TikTok, and thinking about how you communicate discount, what you've seen be more effective.
Yeah, happy to give some insight here. So I think the first piece that's important when you're dealing with TikTok, and especially if you're dealing with TikTok Shop, is it's a very price-sensitive ecosphere, probably more than any other paid social platform that's out there. Now, not to say that this doesn't exist. We don't personally find a ton of success on TikTok, especially TikTok Shop, on products that are over like 500. It's really products that are like 200, 150 and below. That's where we see a ton of movement there. And so we'll leverage TikTok not only to move like top selling products, we'll use it as a way to move inventory that's a little bit stuck that we want to discount heavily. But we'll bring, TikTok is typically where we take our absolute best selling bundles, our best selling combinations there, because it's so competitive and because it's so easy to lose interest in TikTok. TikTok isn't usually a place that we're exploring and testing new offers. It's usually a place that we're taking offers we know that hit, because you have less than a second to capture their interest. And we want to take things there that we know work. And it's funny, we'll leverage TikTok as a place to test new content types, to test new creators, to work with new influencers, but it's not a place that we typically test new offers. So when we're working with the influencers, we'll give them this offer, we'll give them this information. We allow them a ton of creative control. It's a really big thing when we're working with influencers on TikTok. We want them to be able to speak authentically. We work really hard not to script what they're going to say, not to write it. We're going to give them the brief. We're going to review it, make sure that it aligns for brand, brand security and brand vision and all of that. But the best thing that you can do with a creator is say, hey, we know this sells. We know this is a bundle that people love, that we know this is a stack they love. We know this is an XYZ. Tell it to your people in the way you know they want to hear. Time and time again, that seems to prove it to be the most effective way to work with them, is to trust them to communicate in the way they know how.
That's really valuable advice. I'm curious if we can just dive into that point a little bit. Where would you recommend brands do kind of test those new offers or new bundles before bringing it to TikTok?
So we spend a lot more time testing the actual offer itself on Meta. We'll do that through direct. We'll do that through SMS. We'll do that through structured split testing on the website. We do a lot of that where we'll pull 10% or 15% of the site traffic. We'll divert that to another offer. We'll see how that responds, and then we'll scale that incrementally as we measure it. We work with companies like Dynamic Yield. There's other split testing that function for that. But the biggest thing we want to do is we want a like-for-like comparison. And where I see companies go wrong is they may change the homepage offer. They may change their top category offer to this completely different offering. And even if it's better, it's not a strong comparison, right? We can't get statistical significance there if we're not actually comparing it to a holdout. So I'm a huge advocate of holdout testing, huge advocate of actually doing that over the right time scale to make sure that you know definitively that this is a better offering. And then when we're confident in it, we go to the creators, we go to the creator team and say, hey guys, this is doing fantastic. Who can we partner with? Who do we think is a good person in our repertoire to actually take this to market?
I love that. How fast is that iteration cycle, would you say?
So traffic depending, if I'm taking an account that is spending like 100,000 a week on Meta, we can probably iterate that entire cycle in a week, if we're really driving traffic and we're pulling all site traffic. That's assuming that we're pushing organic traffic, direct traffic, owned comms through that. If they're 10 or 20,000 a week, we're probably doing that over like a 2 week, and we're probably increasing the holdout, right? Instead of doing like a 10 or a 15%, we're probably doing a 30 or 40% holdout, pushing to that. What I would say more than anything is don't care so much about the time, care about getting to a confidence ratio that you're comfortable with, right? I try not to do anything below 85 if I can avoid it. I prefer 90. And so that's all just going to depend on what your diversion is, and then allow it to get there. That way, every decision you're making, especially right now, you're doing it confidently, and you don't have to second guess yourself in a week or two.
Yeah. I think within that time frame, also, for the brands in the room, that gives them plenty of time to think about maybe this sort of approach going into, end of November. There's, plenty of time for brands at different spend thresholds.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting into crunch for sure. But if you're still asking that question, there is definitely time. I look at some of the people that are in the chat right now and some of the brands and sizes, and like, there's a lot that are here that have time to still make this happen.
Joe, I'm not sure if you had anything that you wanted to add more from either Meta perspective or any other channels as we think about testing into discounting or anything of that nature.
Yeah, totally. Mine is a bit of a hot take, but Chris would love to hear if you agree. I think one of the most difficult things I see brands do is overcomplicate their discount and overcomplicate their offering for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. I think the truth is that there's so much noise during this time that you're not the only brand they are seeing. And if you have multiple offers, it's going to confuse them even further. So what I've seen success with is picking a simple offer that we know is profitable and scalable, and then come up with 10 different ways to say it, right? So for example, if you're discounting a yearly subscription that costs $150 down to $100 for Black Friday and Cyber Monday, build ads that are calling out 33% off, $50 off, 28 cents a day, $8 per month, right? Come up with different ways to communicate your offer. And that's what Meta really wants, is they want different types of creative around your offer to identify the people who are most likely to convert. And then from there, you can kind of be flexible with your creative team throughout that sale period to pump out more of the stuff that's working. To kind of tie a bow on that, I'd say don't overcomplicate, test ways to say it, not offers in particular.
Well said. I do think this segues nicely into thinking about not only scaling spend on your existing channels, and this is kind of a play on the question we have here, but also thinking about testing into new channels and what the best approach is and how you think about it. Will, I'm not sure if you want to kick us off just in terms of how we recommend brands think about new channel testing and some different recommendations for that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think the great thing about Rockerbox is that we're able to look at all channels in a single place in a kind of holistic environment, right? So you're actually able to compare your owned channels to your paid channels, see how they stack up. And one of the things that we see when we look across brands at Black Friday, Cyber Monday is the importance of those owned channels, which I know, Chris, you mentioned SMS and email earlier. I cannot stress enough how important those are in Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So just really taking an honest assessment, looking back what worked for us in years past and leaning into those results is the first thing. And then obviously scaling the ones that you see the most impact from. In terms of testing, I mean, it takes a lot of bravery, I think, for a brand to test over Black Friday, Cyber Monday, because there's just so much at stake. But certainly the bravest brands do. You know, the bravest brands are not afraid to place a holdout, do some split testing, and just make sure they're setting themselves up for success in the future, as opposed to just trying to capture every single penny this year.
Yeah, I'd be curious, kind of building on this question a little bit more, if anyone has advice or even workflows that they leverage to identify diminishing returns quickly. So maybe brands have identified here the channels we want to spend more in. Maybe they've been tasked to increase meta budget by 50% in a short amount of time. What sort of metrics, what time periods should they be looking at to identify have we hit diminishing returns?
Yeah, I think there's two components to that. One is, like I was mentioning about having a prediction in place is going to help you have plan Bs in place should something not meet your expectation. And so, I think if you're going to give Meta a chance with a scale up but you come in 20% over your CAC and for a 48 to 72 hour period, then you have a plan in place to reallocate and move things around. But ultimately, I think having an objective for each dollar you spend before you spend it across channels and within channels is really going to help you reallocate accordingly. So if you are testing new things on TikTok and are trying to increase your reach there, and things aren't panning out the way that you were planning, then you could shift to another prospecting channel, maybe shift to CTV but you have to have the creatives in place. You have to have your offers in place. And so as much as you can, make it a one variable change so you can be methodical as you move through plan A, B, C, D, and hopefully all of those plans are like increasing spend. But I think I read that 60% of marketers this year are being given a bigger budget for Black Friday, Cyber Monday than last year. And so it's gonna be competitive. The CPMs are going to be in flux, and so it's important to have everything below that impression really buttoned up to give yourself the best chance of conversion.
Yeah, that makes sense. Chris, were you going to add something?
Yeah, I think it's really important that you should already know what you want to accomplish on each channel. I think of everything we've heard here, like that's probably the most important piece. We plan out every dollar of spend and every dollar of revenue that we expect to attain per paid channel, at the start of each month, especially going into Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Like I've taken what the company goals are. We've done the forecasting. We know what the performance targets are, and we already have the scripts written that if we're achieving those, that we're pressing, and if we're falling behind, the budgets are coming back. This should not be the best way to say this is like you should already have the playbook written on what is happening from Black Friday through Cyber Monday based on historical performance. And if you don't, right, if this is your first Black Friday, this is your first time going to bat with this, like there is a ton of information out there on what you should expect scaling to look like, right? You should know there's a lot out there on what happens to conversion rate, what happens to click-through rate, what happens to CPMs, but like if you're going in blind to that, I know what my budget is in Meta. I know what it is in Google. I know what it is in TikTok. I have ad creatives held back. I have promos held back. This should be an execution set of days rather than an innovation set of days. That's where I see the brands crush it, is when they look at this 4 to 5 day period and it is all about, we know what we have to do. We will only fail if one, we don't execute, or two, if we're not ready to pivot. If you have those ready, that's how you crush during it. It's the brands that we've seen or we've worked with that say, well, let's spend this, and then if it's going well, we'll check in at noon and we'll check in at 2, and hey, like comms did really well, and like Chris, can you step away from family time and add another 20% to the budget? Like that's where it gets so messy, is like this playbook should be locked in. And I'm looking at my girlfriend, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna step aside for a second. I know it's 2 p.m. I gotta get, this is gonna run. I'm gonna check on it. Awesome, I'm back. Family doesn't miss a beat. Company doesn't miss a beat. Like that's when things just run smoothly and clients walk away from this weekend just elated.
I really like that line of execution over innovation for a time period like this. We actually do have a question, which is great. If anyone else has questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. So Grace is asking, I think this is for Armen, if the stat you shared is for paid channels only. I'm assuming that yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a paid channel stat coming out of Adweek.
And then we have another question, which is great. And this is just an open question. What do you think will make this BFCM special or different compared to past years? So I think this is potentially more of a macro question, if we think there's any broader trends that are going to impact this year's BFCM compared to last year. I mean, I know last year was obviously a bit different from a election perspective, so that's one thing for us to consider. But I don't know if anyone has any thoughts in the room.
Yeah, I think a couple of the macro trends for Black Friday, Cyber Monday this year. One is going to be AI as a shopping assistant. I think that's a massive change that we're all adjusting to. With ChatGPT, OpenAI's announcement of offering native Shopify integration, as soon as that goes live or goes into testing, that's probably going to be the single. And I think we'll see some of that going into later this year. That'll be one of the single largest upsets we've ever seen for search-based shopping. It's also going to change the way that we need to be building our product pages, the way that we're building our website to contain information that can be indexed and read from an AI perspective. I have, friends that have kids that have like teenagers, and like they don't even use Google. Like they don't even ask Google anything. Like they think they call me, I'm Unk. That's the quote, because I'm on here searching on Google, right? So being ready for that. Second is the attention span continues to diminish. Right? We watch this every year. We go from a 10-second to a 5-second to a 3-second. The impact of your content and the first second of it, the first half second of it, just continues to increase in importance here. We're watching that retention mechanic is ever so important. I think we're going to see a lot more of value-based shopping on TikTok. TikTok shop maturation is hitting like peak for its platform right now. We're seeing a lot of volume move through there, a lot of volume moving through connected purchase platforms. And then this is what everybody says, but deal fatigue and deal launching earlier. We see that customers are shopping. They're being conditioned to expect deals all month. Customers are waiting longer to buy. They're expecting better deals. We need stronger and more unique value props to stand out. Everybody's going to be on discount. And I think that's one of the things that Joe said that was so impactful is find what works, find a dozen ways to say it, right? It's not reasonable to have a dozen or 2 dozen different deals. It is reasonable to have what appears to be a dozen different deals. Right? That's the way that you stay fresh. That's the way that you convince a customer who's considering you to buy, is you say something in a way that resonates with them because they were just waiting to hear it in a way that gave value.
Yeah, and Chris, I totally agree with what you said before about execution. I think my one big piece of advice here was really just not to be scared. So to dive in, right? You built the strategy, set the budgets and spend them. This way you kind of exit those learning phases, and most of your dollars that you have allotted are going toward the winners, not the kind of initial phases. So, and I totally agree. I think the world of AI, of course, is going to change some trends over Black Friday, Cyber Monday. I think probably what we're going to see is the average consumer is going to be even more educated than they were last year and previous years. So think about how much information you can access on basically any product or any service before making that purchase. And we should probably take that into account when building creative and landing pages. The days of kind of fooling the customer are way over, right? In most cases, they know just as much as we do. And so we need to be transparent, and we need to, like we said, kind of figure out different ways to say what we're offering.
Joe, I think you make a great point there, which is, cut as a marketer, as an owner, as an executive, whatever it is, you should go to AI and you should pretend to buy your product from AI's perspective. Hey, should I buy X, Y, and Z product? Can you tell me what's good about it? What's bad about it? What's the sentiment out there? There's reputation management that has become a component of this that hasn't had to be this specific, because AI can aggregate everybody's opinion into a couple paragraphs. Every way that a customer can purchase, you should be validating that path and understanding what the sentiment is behind it. Again, that's going to protect you from getting past Black Friday and realizing, man, somebody dropped a hit YouTube piece on me, or there's a Reddit thread that was blowing me up, or somebody's over here in, some verification system saying that I had a crappy customer service person that swore at them. These are the things that can hiccup you in the process. But if you're testing all those purchase paths, nothing's going to surprise you.
This is all great advice, and hopefully, Lucas, that helped answer your question. I do want to keep moving. And Chris, this actually brings me to your point around being ready to pivot and thinking plan B. I'd love if, and I know I put you on the hot seat a few times now, but I'd love if you can start and talk through what is the pivot plan that you help brands design going into a time like Black Friday, Cyber Monday.
Yeah, I think both Joe and Armen called this out, that like, if you have these buckets of spend and you have these KPIs, right? And we know that, in my case, we usually have 4 channels that we're going to split between. It's going to be Google, it's going to be Meta, it's going to be TikTok, and then it's going to be either Snapchat with maybe a bit of like app loving, Pinterest, Reddit. You have like the little cabal to the side of all the other channels. And so for us, if Meta isn't working, there's usually 2 changes that we're going to make. And again, I'm really big, broad brushstrokes here. One is going to be, we're going to launch a different creative set of offers, or we're going to scale spend and transition them between campaigns. This is where Rockerbox comes in. You guys know that we are deeply, especially with some of our larger clients, like we're making changes on a daily basis at the creative level with clients that are spending $100,000 a day during Black Friday. We're looking at shutting off creatives, and we're looking at moving campaigns. So there's going to be intra-account shifts. So plan B is really plan B, C, and D. Plan B is typically, I want to shift these between campaigns and creatives inside the account. Plan C is I'm going to launch backup campaigns that have net new offers or net new creatives. And then plan D is I'm going to holistically shift budget from one platform to the other. Now, the budget shifting between platforms, I am doing every single day in conjunction with plan B. Every day I'm looking at what is the ROAS of this platform and this creative, and I'm splitting that spend as much as I can daily based on where I can chase performance. Now, this gets tricky based on your spend levels. This is a difficult thing to do if you're only spending $5,000 a day, right? This is much harder to make these big macro shifts because you'll reset campaigns, you'll reset learning. The more spend you have, the more you can shift. So be mindful of what those relearning thresholds are. But we break B, C, and D down in that capacity so that we're always level setting spend between platforms, chasing creative iterations and offer iterations.
That's hugely helpful. I don't know if anyone else has insight they'd like to add on to that.
Yeah, I think it's really about defining your levers in advance, and the way that Chris laid it out is perfect, because you understand and you know what your options are, and then you're ultimately in execution mode. And so, I think obviously developing new creative and doing those things is you're not going to have enough time. So ultimately it becomes about shifting budget to the right place and pulling down creatives, and hopefully you have some backup creatives that you're in position to lean into. This is another place where some of the generative AI opportunities around tweaking of existing creatives becomes an option. So you're not going to make holistic changes to your campaign, but ultimately, we've worked with brands to go from a very regional focus and have very specific ads for that region. And then ultimately, if those don't pan out, then you move to the more generalized things that are more proven elsewhere. So, having that game plan in place before, the promo starts. And then, there's also the break the glass type of actions like extending the promo or shifting the promo or deepening the discount. So you should have that break the glass situation defined and move into. We all have those instances and those periods where we have to do something drastic, and but being prepared and moving into that phase is obviously important to do beforehand.
Yeah, agreed with all points. I think my perspective in terms of inside the platform is, Chris, you took the words out of my mouth, is have those backup campaigns built already, especially if you're spending significant dollars. It totally makes sense to develop a little bit more creative, build out more campaigns, and ensure that your campaign structure is bulletproof, so that it's as simple as turning a campaign on when things go wrong, right? And that could be more kind of evergreen type creative that has worked for the past 9 months. It could be a slightly different way of framing the offer. Whatever that may be, I certainly think it's worth having a safety net. This way, within the platform, you are not having to go build out ad sets and build out creative and upload things to the platform when the clock is ticking, right?
And the one other thing I'll add to this is, making sure you're not overreacting to false flags either. So if you're leaning into a new channel or you're testing into a prospecting channel, making sure that your upper funnel signals are in place for you to count on the conversion that's going to come in the future rather than overreacting. I think that's where MTA and the Rockerbox solution is really helpful, when you have the first touch signals and you have increased traffic potentially to your site, you have increased visitation, and you have and you're tracking your funnel compression and the shortening of that time to conversion. So if you have those mechanisms in place, there's sometimes an opportunity to stay the course and count on your lower funnel tactics leading to that conversion eventually. And so not overreacting to a slow start is potentially could hurt yourself in the long run.
I think that actually segues really nicely, Armen, into our next question, which is just thinking about frameworks for measurement. And as we talk about what KPIs we're looking at, what are measurement, how do we measure success? What is the right measurement methodology to answer different types of questions? Where should brands be leaning in right now? And I don't know if you have any thoughts here.
I think I wish there was a single answer here where there would be a single framework that would apply, but obviously every brand is different and every situation is different and everything is changing around us in the world. So I think what ultimately the measurement can help with is avoiding errors and avoiding things. So that should be the first threshold that you kind of meet. And I think specifically around promo periods, understanding your customer type, like I mentioned earlier, is really critical. Are you getting new visitors, new customers coming to your through your funnel, or is it a returning customer or a reactivated customer? And so properly weighting that and having a baseline in place, and then understanding the profitability of each, obviously watching ROAS and watching that immediate revenue is critical, and we can't run out of cash, so we have to obviously keep an eye on that. But then the LTV component is really interesting in the long run, and if you've broadened your audience base and you've brought in people that are predictably high LTV, then the benefit of the promo kind of lingers on and lives on beyond this immediate period. So I would say the customer mix is probably an area where it's executable and people can put that in place rather quickly. And so that if you don't have that in place, I would probably invest in that first and then move on to some of the LTV predictions thereafter to understand the quality of that customer more specifically.
That's great. Will, I don't know if you want to hop in here.
Yeah, of course. I think from the Rockerbox perspective, I think where I would always tend to lean is on the idea of diminishing returns and understanding, as you're creating not your budget plan, but your plan for how you are going to make decisions in the moment, which all the other panelists have been talking about extensively. Having an idea of which channels are going to max out quickest ahead of time is just such a critical input into that plan. Because if you're starting to increase budget and you see Meta's maxed out, I can't spend more there, then you have to know immediately which is the next channel that you're going to start increasing budget in to absorb some of that budget, that demand. And you cannot be doing that in the moment, right? You have to have figured this all out kind of weeks ahead of time, so that once you have the plan, you go into those critical days knowing how you're going to pull the levers. So I think the diminishing returns, which you can get from all three of these methodologies, candidly, is going to be the most important thing.
Kelsey, mind if I give a couple thoughts on this?
Please.
So I've got a little playbook on this, is kind of the way that I approach it. So first is going to be one, like if you don't have an MMM set up, you're not going to set one up before we get there. And MMMs you're not going to use that day to day, right? So if you're hearing MMM and you want to be able to get to that, you want to leverage that, if you haven't done it already, that's a Q1 project, right? So if you have an MTA or you have an attribution system, great. If you don't have one and you want one, set one up today, right? Like you're going to want that data going forward. But outside of that, sort of the way that we think about it is, first, I think about velocity metrics, right? What are daily metrics that I can react to? This is going to be ROAS by channel, click-through rate and conversion rate, and then CPA or CAC shifting. I should understand already what is my relationship between MTA ROAS and platform ROAS, so that I can be looking at platform on a daily basis and making decisions based on creative performance and based on intraday performance that I know will align closely what's going on with my MTA. So really, really important actionable item is that if you are only ever optimizing based off of what you see in your MTA, you are missing the ability to be a little bit more aggressive and to get a little bit quicker reaction time out of both your dollars and your performance. What we do is we make all of those decisions and then we validate them in Rockerbox, right? We use Rockerbox as a source of truth, but we need to be able to make decisions intraday. We need to be able to estimate what is going to happen. So we have to understand the relationship between platform and between Rockerbox. It's also how we leverage all of the smart tools. From there, as far as it goes into like testing or, creative decision making, you should have proxies or have goals set for what is my thumb stop ratio, what is my hook rate ratio, and then you should have a kill, scale, hold framework setup that says, okay, I'm going to kill all ads that are below X ROAS, that are below X engagement, that are below X metric. I'm going to scale all ads that are in the top 20% of ROAS, in the top 20% of engagement, top 20% of X. I'm going to hold X in my mid performers, right? You should have this framework identified so that every day you know what is my kill, scale, hold. That's how you move aggressively intraday. Final would be, if you're already doing your lift test, if you're doing your incrementality testing, whether it's with platform, whether it's with house, whether it's yourself, this is your last chance to tweak what the incrementality, the iROAS is to what you're seeing in platform and what you're seeing with MTA. You've probably got about 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks left to really get a read if there's been any shift in the iROAS this quarter versus last year, and then be able to adjust your targets there. That's sort of my general framework of how we approach it.
That's really thoughtful.
One thing I'll just add there, and I think is super important, like Chris mentioned, is to keep an eye on the signals within platform. Yes, the MTA is your source of truth. It's certainly what you need to use for big swing optimizations. But at the end of the day, in 99% of the cases for businesses, Meta is optimizing and hunting, if you will, on its own data. And so you need to watch that as well, especially for some of those quick turn optimizations. I think one of the biggest metrics that I look at, while simple and is really spend, right? So take a look at CAC, take a look at ROAS, of course, but I think spend is a really good signal within the Meta platform to help you understand what type of creative is really going to resonate and can help you act really quickly and scale.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful advice. I feel like a lot of what we've been talking about today is around the lines of a really strong plan, ready to execute, pivot if you need to, and that comes with a certain degree of operational readiness from brands. And I'm not sure if anyone has any advice specifically from an operational perspective. What are the few things that brands should be doing to help put these pieces into motion?
If you're working with an agency, make sure you've had a session to sit down and ask all these questions. Right? That's probably the place to start with all of this. Is you should understand from your account manager or from your strategist, guys, what is our ABC plan here? What are the creatives that we're holding back? What are the promotions that we're ready to launch if something happens? How are you guys handling scaling on Thanksgiving, on Black Friday, over the weekend? Who's actually making the changes? Are these humans? Are these scripts? Like, what's the frequency that you're watching it? Like, these should all be things that are clear cut and defined so that you're not caught surprised on Monday or on Sunday when you check and they're like, oh, well, Saturday is actually only a day that we have scripts running. We don't actually have anybody available. And a payment method went down, right? Heaven forbid the word. I had that happen one year. I lost a payment method on a 6-figure daily spender, and like, cataclysmic. Now, luckily, we caught it within an hour, but like, these are the questions that you should answer. All the other planning should come after you have these basic ones decided. It's really, again, it goes back to that execution comment. You should know exactly where you're going to communicate, how often you're going to communicate, what's being held in reserve, what the war chest reserve is, and then it's just making sure that all of that is prepared and all of those are answered. Once that's defined, you're probably going to be able to ask a whole bunch of other questions. But if you don't answer that first, everything else is just kind of like a dartboard.
Yeah, I think I love that first step is just asking the right questions. Does anyone else have any input here?
Yeah, I think in terms of team alignment, the most important thing you could probably do from a meta perspective is ensure that the CRO team, if they exist, and the creative team are empowered with data to build rapidly. So I think constant communication between people who are basically buying the paid media and those who are helping drive conversion through creative or landing pages is crucial. And ideally, they have a view into what's working without you having to go into Slack and say, here's what's working, develop more ads like this, right? Give them the transparency there, let them start to be proactive so that ads are ready to go for that plan B or for that scale plan when things are working.
Yeah, and that, as an analytics person, I love that, and having everyone looking at the same numbers, having that single source of truth, whether that's your MTA or having like the right KPIs predetermined. To Chris's point around having a plan in place for each KPI, right? So if your website conversion rate isn't up to your expectations versus your click-through rate versus your hold rate, all of these things, you can become more granular once you set that North Star target. And then from there, you have contingency plans for each KPI as it falls short of expectation or exceeds expectation. You can rally the other components around it based off of that.
Great. And we have some more comments and questions. Chris, it looks like you already have some fans in the audience. The best next step is hiring Chris. But then after that, we do have a question for Grace again. What steps can a marketing channel vendor take for their brands in preparation for BFCM? And an extension of that is probably how does that differ from any advice given from more of the brand's lens today?
And Grace, just to be clear, what you're saying is like you're a specific channel, like a Meta or a TikTok, like you're trying to prepare as a specific vendor of that channel. Just want to make sure I'm understanding the question. Yes, offline. Man, I'm the wrong guy to answer offline marketing channels. I'm gonna sit back and watch somebody else answer that one.
Grace, you're from.
Can you give us like an example or something that's like maybe it'll spark with somebody else?
Pebble Post is you're with direct mail. Is that correct? Okay, perfect. So specifically direct mail vendor, which I think is an interesting question of anything to prep working with their customers going into holiday catalog. Will, do you have anything to share here of what we've seen?
Yeah,
from a direct mail perspective?
Yeah, I do. I mean, actually, direct mail does provide a huge amount of value in BFCM. We see that pop for a lot of our customers during that time period, especially. I think it's really important to remember that getting the word out about your promo is far and away the most important thing. You know, like the promo should be doing the hard work here. It shouldn't necessarily be the targeting. Yeah, it can be the media and the creative in the sense that the messaging around the promo is super important. But I think the more ways that you have to get the message out, the better. And we've seen success in direct mail, but obviously you have just a longer lead time. So you need to prepare way ahead of time. You need to be thinking about those creative decisions way ahead of time. And that just requires far more planning, especially because every brand is unique. The offers are going to be unique, and they're going to be very dependent on the competitive environment, the strength of that brand, the product, and so on and so forth. So I think, especially when you're thinking about offline, just embracing those longer lead times, start planning even earlier than you would for almost any other channel.
Great. And I know we actually are coming up on time here, and I want to make sure we have time for any other questions. We have one last lightning round for the group, and we've already talked about this a lot, but if you had to just choose one metric or signal that's most important to you during this critical time period, what are you watching and why?
I can start. I would say personally, I would watch CAC or CPA, which may be an unpopular choice, but the research that we have suggests that consumer behavior is pretty different in BFCM than other times of year, and so you have to be very aware that your LTV is likely to be quite different for the customers that you're acquiring during BFCM versus other more normal periods, and so if you're just thinking about your LTV as flat, every customer is worth the same, then you're probably optimizing towards the wrong CAC threshold during BFCM. And you need to be very, very carefully aware of that, because otherwise you might be optimizing revenue and really missing the target on profitability. So that's my answer.
That's a good one. Well, I'd say the time to conversion, and to Will's point earlier about the offer doing the work, I think if your offer is compelling and you've tested and you feel confident in it, then it should be appealing to your existing customers, your former customers. So, you're going to get some incremental activity there, obviously at the cost of the profitability. So you need to make sure that balance is right, but ultimately time to conversion, and because last year I think the Cyber Monday had 13.3 billion in sales that one day, which was the biggest shopping day ever. So the people are willing and ready to shop. So you want to get that conversion then, and so focusing there and your time to conversion is what I would say.
Yeah. Joe?
Yeah, I think I'll use conversion rate both within platform and on landing page, because as you scale spend and potentially change offers and creative, that is one metric you can kind of look at throughout the entire period, right? It's a good way to understand what folks' hunger for your product is. And it's also a good way to find any issues with the checkout flow or the process should they arise. So conversion rate outside of CAC, I think it is a big one that I keep an eye on.
Great. And Chris?
It's funny, conversion rate was actually the one I was going to say as well. It's assuming that you've put everything else into place already, you should be really in a triage perspective from Black Friday to Cyber Monday, in that you're trying to identify what's going wrong. If you have all the creative set up, if you have all of your offer set up, you have your backups build, then what I'm trying to find is, where is conversion rate dropping? Is there a site speed issue? Is there a checkout flow issue? Did we run out of inventory on a hero product? Did we drop an offer and customers are bouncing from that offer? Is there an issue on mobile? Right? I'm now trying to go into this point where I'm trying to find all the things that are going wrong, because if everything is going right, I already have the scaling plan built. So I'm looking at conversion rate as like That's how you prevent an amazing set of creative and an amazing offer failing, is by being mindful of all the things that could go wrong and having a mechanic to track all of them.
Well said. Well, I want to thank you all for joining, and also thank you to our panelists. This has been really a rich discussion and super helpful for, I'm sure, all the brands who joined today. So any questions that we didn't already cover that we can speak to in our last few minutes here? We covered so much that there's no questions left. Well, great. I want to thank everyone for joining, and yeah, thank you again to the panelists. This has been awesome, and we're very appreciative of your time.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Awesome.
See you guys later.